Yeah, I got him, but this is not what this story's about. It's about this. Oh my God. And of course that. And it's about this. Remember this? And it's about this. This is where this story starts. I was walking around this morning, getting ready to do my morning run. I'm up to about 30 minutes a day now, religiously. I don't miss my runs. I'll miss a meal before I miss my runs. It's something that's very important to me. And I had not intended to make this video, but then I found this while I was walking. And I found it right here where I'm sitting, which happens to be right underneath about a 15 to 20 year old locust tree that we have used on occasion as a gifting tree, a gifting spot. If you've been following the channel for a while, you've seen those videos. This was not left here by us. This was left by our campfire about 4 days ago while we were looking at this and some other shells that a friend of ours recently gave us. We have a friend whose father, who I've met, is a friend also. Frank is an avid sheller. He's an avid beachcomber. Great guy. He's in his 70s. Looks like he's in his mid 50s because he runs. He's very fit. He has a healthy diet, no drugs, no alcohol. Super attitude, always happy, always smiling, always positive. It does wonders. He's 73 or 75. He looks 50. And he could probably beat me in a foot race. So shout out to you, Frank. Frank recently gave my beautiful bride Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, a bunch of shells he had gathered from various places. I mean, this guy's into it. He lives in Maryland, but he'll watch the tides. If there's going to be a low tide in Florida and there's a particular shell that's common to a particular beach, he'll fly down there during low tide to go shelling. So he's really passionate about this. And as you can see, he finds some beautiful shells. So we're up here at the campfire the other night, just before dark. We're looking at shells. It started to rain. We grabbed as much stuff as we could carry, went home, never thought much about it. And so I realized the next day that the shell was missing. This is my favorite of this most recent batch. It's like a bluish gray, and I like it because our bedroom furniture set looks like this. It's like a gray oak type veneer design on our dressers, our nightstands, and our head posts and foot posts of our bed. We had the stuff custom made years ago, and it's beautiful, and this matches it perfectly. So I realized this shell was gone, and I thought, well, we misplaced. You know what's really weird, guys? This wind, you can hear it picking up right now. There wasn't even a breeze this morning. There was no breeze, and there wasn't a breeze when I was up here and found this shell by the gifting tree. I went down, got the camera, got a couple other items I want to talk to you about here. It's kind of telling you the scariest stories you've never seen or heard in these videos. Guys, we do about 2 videos a week now. They're about 12 and a half minutes long, average. Some are a little bit longer, some are not as long. So you're seeing about 1 hour and 50 minutes a month of what's going on around here. And it's at times when we said, okay, well, it's time to make another video. You don't see the other 29 days, 22 hours and 10 minutes or whatever the math is on that. And during this time is when things happen that is never caught on camera. A lot of times things I've just never even talked about, but I'm going to talk about them today because of this shell. This reminds me of the drone. If you've been following us for a while, there's 2 videos I'm going to tie on to the end of this video. If you watch this video and you want to see some backstory of what I'm talking about, one's about my super secret bug out shelter that you'd walk by a million times and never see, and then The other one is about a drone. Terrifying night of potential Bigfoot Sasquatch in our drone. If you saw that, you'll remember dearly my wife and I, one day last fall, were flying this little teeny tiny drone. It was our son's drone. He was in school. We were testing it out, seeing how high it would go, how far it would go, and this thing went so high, it flew up in the top of one of our white pines, giant white pines, which ironically is no longer there because somebody may have potentially tore it down and threw it at our house. But so we lose the drone in the top of the tree. We're like, oh great, we just lost our kid's toy. The next day, it was 5 feet away from our back door on our back porch, which is covered, has a roof and awning over it that extends out about 12 feet in all directions from the door. So there's no way it fell from the tree and landed there. If it would have fallen from the tree, it would have landed on the roof. To this day, we can't explain how it got there. And this is around the time a lot of these strange things around here started happening, or at least we started noticing these strange things. So this is very similar. I'm going to get to that drone, but this is a replica. This is not the actual piece of wood, but I referenced a video about my super secret bug out shelter. You can watch that at the end. You know, when this happened, I thought, well, that's one story I'll never tell because, you know, a lot of the folks comment I'm crazy, a sandwich short of a picnic, all these things. I thought if I ever tell that story, they'll definitely, absolutely be convinced of that. But I'm going to tell it anyway because of the seashell. I was out here in the fields. This was probably January or February. And Dearly was in the house. Our son was in school, and she was preparing our lunch. And even from here, I'm 200 yards away from my house. But if I were to stand up, I could look in and see into our kitchen window. And she's short, she's 5 feet tall, you've seen her, she's a tiny little thing, but she always wears her ponytail up on top of her head. So you could look in the window and you see her little ponytail bebopping around there in the window while she's doing whatever in the kitchen. That day she was preparing our lunch. So I'm walking through the field, I'm showing my brush piles, and I'm talking about building your super secret bug out shelters and make sure they blend in with the surroundings so you can't see them. And so she knew I was making a video, okay, like she does now. So she's not in this video, contrary to trollish belief. She's not back here in a ghillie suit or whatever. We're going to talk about that too. You didn't see it, and you might have heard it, but so anyway, I get to the bug out shelter. I'm ready to go inside the bug out shelter, show you the inside of the bug out shelter. I look over, 150 yards away. I see Dearly's ponytail bebopping around there in the windows in the kitchen. She's in there preparing our meal. So I climb into the shelter. I have not started recording yet. I've got the phone. I'm getting comfortable, moving around. There's sticks and stuff underneath me. And I hear footsteps coming through the field, coming through the weeds. Just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Somebody's coming. And I'm thinking, well, I better wait a minute before I record this part of the video. Dearly's coming out to tell me lunch is ready. And so I'm going to tell her, yeah, okay, honey, I'll be there in just a minute. Let me finish this scene. So the footsteps come right up to the shelter beside it, and they stop. And so I think, well, I'm going to crawl out and tell her, hey, I'll be done in a minute. So I crawl out, and she's not there. No one's there. I stand up, and I look. I'm getting a little bit creeped out right now telling this story. I look over in the window 150 yards away, and there's her little ponytail bebopping around while she's doing whatever she's doing in the kitchen. And our son's in school. I look. Yeah, we're going to get to this. Trust me. Rewind and listen. This was happening a lot last night, and it happens a lot all the time. It happens a lot that other 23 days, or 29 days, 23 hours, and whatever odd minutes you don't see. So, Dearly's in the kitchen, so I'm convinced I'm hearing things. Okay, so I crawl back in the shelter. I start recording. I'm talking about how the shelter is well stocked. Guys, I'm just going to try to just keep talking through all this stuff. I'm going to try to ignore what's going on around me here. So, you know, I'm holding up the canned food I've got in there, and I'm holding up the water, and all of a sudden a piece of wood ends up being tossed on top of the shelter. A piece of wood ends up on top of the shelter. So I said, and you can see it in the video, I'm going to put it at the end of this one. I'm like, "Hon, is that you?" Because now this time I'm convinced maybe she did come out or whatever. I didn't know what to think. So I continue to record through that scene till I finish the video. So afterward, I go over, and on top of the shelter there is indeed a piece of firewood on top of the shelter, and the bug out shelter is not anywhere close to where we stack our firewood, and I didn't have any firewood around there. So I go in, we're eating lunch, and I'm like, "Oh, by the way, honey, did you like come out and put a wood on the shelter or where I was and all this?" And of course she said no, and I didn't really go past that point with it because I didn't want to scare her. But look at that baby deer. Baby deer, baby deer. See it? Little fawn. It's about a week old. Wasn't that cute? You guys know we have a huge free-range deer herd around here, and these little fawns are everywhere. So, okay, that was not a potential Bigfoot Sasquatch. That was a factual fawn. I love living here. So anyway, that's the story behind this. Now, what's been going on around me here that I said we'll get to really has a lot to do with this. You remember that one video I made, Fix My Hair, what's left of it, where I did like the bird box style? That was not a fawn. Okay, so here's one of the scariest stories you've never heard, you've never seen. When I'm out there in the woods that day, when I was out there in the woods that day, so I put this thing, I'm not leaving. I am not leaving. I'm staying right here, and I'm finishing this series of stories, the scariest stories you've never heard, because now's the time to hear them. Whether he, she, it, or they want them told or not. So I put this thing on, right? At first I was covering both eyes. My original plan for that video was to cover both eyes and kind of walk around and see if we could capture anything watching me when I couldn't see it. So I had both eyes covered. I'm out there in the woods. Dearly wasn't with me at all that day. And so I'm trying to kind of get my bearings, and then here comes those same footsteps I heard when I was in the bug out shelter. The story I just told you. Something's walking right up to me, and of course I freak out. I pull this thing down, I look, and there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Ooh. So I'm thinking, okay, crazy lake, your imagination's getting the best of you. These stories you're telling, or you're believing them yourself. So I put the thing back on, covered both eyes. I'd moved a little bit. I'd walked around looking behind trees, making sure nobody or nothing was there, what's going on. So I'm maybe 15 or 20 yards further away. I put the thing back on, I get the phone back up, I start to record again, and the same thing, footsteps, walks right up to me. So I stop, I look around, and then if you remember that video, and I'm going to try to remember to put it on the end of this one, that's why in that video I've said, okay, we're covering one eye to change the way we react. We're covering our not our dominant eye, but our, recessive whatever. Originally I was going to cover both eyes, but after that happened twice, I decided there's no way I'm going to be blindfolded out here with whatever is potentially out here with me. So that's story number 2. Now we're going to wrap this up. I've been jibber jabbering. I said these videos are 12.5 minutes long. We're going on 15 minutes now, and y'all's time's important, and I know that. And I appreciate you being here with me when I tell these stories. I love doing it. And I'm determined to get to the bottom of what may or may not be out here in the forest behind my home. But this shell, okay, so we're here the other night, the campfire. We're looking at some of these new shells Frank just gave Dearly. And Couldn't find this one. It's missing, and it was my favorite new shell because it looks like our bedroom furniture set. Well, I'm out here this morning, walking around, warming up. I guess it's all about 70-year-olds. Guys, age is a number. And what do they say? You don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. I remember about 15 years ago, I did a 5K road race down in town there in Charlottesville. And I almost got beat by a guy who was 70 years old. Now, 15 years ago, I was pretty fast. What am I, 45? So I would have been about 30. And I was still running 18-minute and change 5Ks. I mean, that's 6-minute mile pace for 3.1 miles. I almost got beat by a 70-year-old man. I had to outkick him at the end. Oh. So, anyway, I spent some time talking with him after that road race. And I asked him, what's the secret? You're 70 years old and you're still running 6-minute miles? And he told me the secret that he didn't determine until he was like in his 50s was walking. He said he used to go out, he'd run, and he'd be done. He'd never warm up, he'd never cool down. So he told me now he'll walk for 30 minutes before he even starts running. And then after he runs, he'll walk for another 30 minutes. He's like, I'm retired, all I've got's time. So, you know, I try to learn from those who have been there before me and done things. It worked for him, so it's something I do. So I'll walk for 20 or 30 minutes before I start my run, then I'll walk for 20 or 30 minutes afterward. So, you know, a 30-minute run actually takes me 2 hours, but it's fine, I got the time. So anyway, I found this when I was walking up here by the gifting tree. So I have to ask, because we have left gifts here in the past, did something out here see this shell and just think, you know what, it's in the wrong place, it belongs over here? I'm about 20 yards behind our fire pit where we have our fire in the evenings at our campground. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer. I don't know who tossed the wood on the shelter. I don't know who may or may not have walked up to me in the woods when I'm blindfolded, and I don't know how. I mean, it is possible a raccoon. Those guys are interesting, the things they'll do. We've learned we can't leave any dishes out on the porch at night, of course, because even if it's empty, the raccoon will come up, and it's like if there's no food in it, the raccoon will break it because it's angry that there was no food. I don't know. Maybe it was a raccoon. Maybe it was something else. But those footsteps, it happened twice during the recording of this video, and I even saw a vine there move when I heard the steps come up, and then I saw it move, and there's nothing there. I'm telling you, there's nothing there that I can see with my eyes. I don't know how you could explain any of this, and I'm not even going to try. I've never claimed to see Bigfoot Sasquatch. I've never claimed to see, you know, guys, I just tell the stories, and I leave what may or may not be out there up to you to decide. Thanks for being with me here for another episode of PBS. The potential Bigfoot Sasquatch show.